The moment you realized you were mistaking your kids for coworkers.
Okay, team, I'm taking my 15 now.
Taking 15 what?
Was the moment you knew it was time to get back to work. Let's job it up. At CareerBuilder, our simple, customizable search tool lets you search for part-time, full-time, and even work-from-home jobs, so you can find a job that fits your lifestyle. Get started now at CareerBuilder.com.
Hello, welcome back. You are listening to What's Up Doc podcast, which is the documentary review podcast. I'm your host, Gemma Delaney, and we are on episode 3 of season 2. As always, guys, you can find us online on all of your social media forums on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We are at What's Up Doc podcast, all one word. Hit us up there and take part in what we're doing. We're letting you guys select our topics, and indeed we're giving you a little bit of additional information about the documentaries that we review there as well. So like I said, if you follow me on social media, you'll already know that what we're covering today is the already infamous documentary Tiger King, bearing in mind that that came out on Friday, and today is what, Wednesday. Like, it's comedy gold, I suppose, and it has been the source of a gazillion memes, which I don't know about you, but have definitely kept me amused during our COVID-19 self-isolation and quarantine, depending on what country you're in. But yeah, so I'm going to do my best to break it down for you. What is it about? It is about a guy called Joe Exotic, not his given Christian name. You will be surprised. He is the self-appointed Tiger King, hence the name of the documentary. This is directed by Eric Good as well, I should say. But yeah, Joe is just like, I don't even know how would you describe Joe if you have not seen the documentary. He is a rootin', tootin', gunslinging, flamboyantly homosexual. Think sequined camo and tiger print shirts. Think leather pants. Think leather chaps for that matter. Think a bleach blonde mullet, multiple body piercings, most of them hanging on for dear life. I think you'll agree. And he is the owner, and kind of like I said, self-appointed Tiger King of his own little kingdom down in GW Wynwood, Oklahoma, or as producer Rick Kirkman aptly names it later on in the documentary, Bumfuck, Oklahoma. That killed me. If you watch my stories, you'll already know that I actually died. But yeah, so he's got 2 husbands, young husbands, I would kind of early 20s, and he is running this park, and he's just a very flamboyant, larger than life character. And he's an online TV show about himself, about running this park. And yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the premise of the story. But to go deeper, I suppose, what is the documentary about? Again, like I said, this is a documentary within a documentary within a documentary. There's so many different things going on here. I think though, and hopefully you'll agree with me, I think the real the main story in this is Joe versus his arch-nemesis, and that is Carole Baskin. So why are they arch-nemeses? Whatever. The reason being is that, like I said, Joe is a self-professed Tiger King. He has got like a gazillion exotic wild cats in his GW park down in Wynwood, Oklahoma. And Carole Baskin is you know, she calls herself the Mother Teresa of wild cats. So she is professing that she's on the opposite end of the scale of Joe, where Joe is exploiting these animals for his own personal and financial gain. Carol is doing everything out of the goodness out of her heart, and she is rescuing these tigers and lions and pumas and all kind of, you know, exotic cats from this life where they've been made to perform, where they've been kept in cages. And yeah, so she's just purporting to be the complete opposite end of the scale of him, and she bashes him at every available opportunity, and that's kind of where the shit hits the fan. So I don't think, you know, he's too aware of her until she starts going for him. Or at least that's the way the documentary plays out the narrative. I mean, you know yourself, guys, you don't know. This is the story we're being sold. So this is what they're saying, kind of, you know, in the first couple of moments of the documentary. It's a 7-parter as well, I might add, this documentary. So it's 7 separate parts on Netflix. So yeah, that's basically what the premise of the story is. I had no prior knowledge of this story. This story didn't make it over to this side of the pond at all. I don't know whether it was that massive a story in America either. I could be wrong. Since seeing the documentary and obviously doing a bit of research on the subject for this podcast, obviously I've learned that there was a really well-known and well-received acclaimed podcast on the subject before this documentary was ever done. So that's interesting, actually. It's interesting that this was turned into a podcast before a documentary, for the simple fact that, like, it's so visual. And if you've seen it, you'll know what I fucking mean. It's just so visual. I don't know who sat down with this idea and said, nah, this would make a better podcast. Like, fuck no. It's a documentary out and out. It's probably a mini series, to be fair, like made for TV Lifetime movie is what it really needs to be. And I propose we have David Spade playing Joe Exotic in that, and I will fight you on that one. I defy you to come up with a better suggestion. But yeah, like it's just all bells and whistles, this one. So, but yeah, apparently there was a podcast, and a very successful podcast on the subject, and so some of you may have been familiar with the subject matter as a result of that, but me, for my part, I was not. I had never heard of this story until Netflix very kindly suggested it to me. They know me so well. I love when they send your little suggestions going, something you might be into. This is coming up on March 20th. And Netflix, you saucy little minx, you know me so well. So yeah, but like, having said that, I didn't really expect a whole lot out of this documentary. So when I got sent the preview, I was just like, oh, Jesus, like I wasn't really, you know, dying to see it in the way maybe that I was, you know, the two Coreys, or the documentary that we've just done, The Most Dangerous Animal of All. Yeah, probably wasn't like super anticipating this as much. I looked at the preview, I saw, you know, gay men, blonde mullets, tigers, and I guess I kind of thought back to Vegas shows and kind of Sigmund and Freud and, you know, that kind of thing, and it wasn't really interesting me until it goes into the true crime genre, I suppose, and it gets a little bit darker. And how it does that is the documentary unfolds, and we realise that what we're building to is Joe's incarceration. And so we're kind of fed these little bits at the end of every episode where we kind of are brought to the realization that Joe is currently incarcerated. So everything that we're looking at is looking back at the past. This is not the reality as it is at the present moment. And I suppose we're trying to figure out, why is he incarcerated and what has gone wrong? Because at the start, he's got this glittering kingdom. He's got this, you know, family of adoring helpers, I guess. They work within the zoo. They're all kind of social misfits. You know, one guy has no legs. He lost it in a zip lining accident. Another helper in the park, Saf, lost their arm, that was by a tiger, putting their arm into a tiger cage. And yeah, they're just, and you know, some people are just out of jail, or they're just kind of, you know, they had nothing before they came to this park. One of the guys, I think it's the park manager, I could be wrong, but he says, like, you know, he found the park on Craigslist. Literally, that's where he saw the advertisement to run a fucking zoo, in effect, you know, Craigslist, like, you know, no prior experience required. Just don't be eaten. But yeah, so it's a band of kind of misfits running this zoo, and then we are shown that Joe is currently incarcerated, and that's done through a series of those, you know, as they do, the little calls, you know, this is a collect call from whatever jail he's in, and you know, he gives some little tidbit as to, you know, kind of rootin' tootin', you know, I did not do that, and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, what didn't he do? And it leaves it as that. It doesn't give too much information. But as the 7 episodes unwind, we realise that what's happened is that Joe has been incarcerated for the alleged plotting to murder Carol Baskin, his arch-nemesis. And you're kind of like, fuck, like, how does it get to that stage? How does it get so bad? And that's really, you know, what the documentary takes us through step by step. So it shows how, you know, Carol is just going for Joe, constantly accusing him of, you know, breaking all of these animal rights laws. And as we learn in the documentary, actually, there doesn't seem to be many in America. The animal rights laws seem to be fairly lax. The fact that, you know, you can just acquire these animals and it doesn't, you know, you don't have to do a course, or you don't seem to need to have any qualification or anything like that. But yeah, so she's going for him constantly and saying, like, he is cruel, he is, you know, abusing these, that he is like hyper breeding the tigers, really. And what I mean by that is that, you know, he is forcing them to breed, kind of like a puppy farm, I suppose, really, but for tiger cubs. He's forcing them to breed over and over and over again. And what he's doing is, and the reason being is that obviously, you know, tiger cubs are in high demand. You can get about $5,000 for them, I think they say at one stage in the documentary. And everybody loves kittens and cubs, don't they? Like, everybody loves baby whatever animals, you know, so they're the seller. So he's like doing this hyper breeding of these animals. He's selling the ones he doesn't need, and allegedly the ones he hangs on to, you know, make it to a certain age where they're still cutesy, and then they disappear. There is no more of them after, I think they say, about 12 weeks or that. They're really dangerous at that point. You can't allow petting, you can't allow holding. And that is exactly what he's doing. He's going around to shopping malls, he's going to schools, he's, you know, and literally selling himself as this guy who wants to save the tigers. So, you know, going around showing people, making people get emotionally involved in these tiger clubs, and through that then, you know, they'll donate to the relevant organisations who are trying to maintain tigers in their natural habitat. So that's what he's saying. From Joe's point of view, that's what he's doing. He is an exotic wild cat advocate as well. He's not profiting for it for the sole purpose of profiting. He is doing it because he loves these animals. They are like his family, and he's trying to get, you know, conservation and all that jazz. And to be fair, there's ample evidence to in favour of that. In the beginning of the documentary, like, you see him rolling around in cages with these, and you see him there for the birth of them, and, you know, you look into his house and they have like little portable cradles that you'd put a baby or a toddler in, and, you know, there's a couple of tiger cubs or lion cubs in them, and he's doing night feeds, and, you know, like surrogate da or surrogate ma, really, you know. So there is ample evidence to suggest that is his motivation in the start of the documentary, and you do feel that. You definitely feel like he's a good guy, if not a little fucking mad, but like definitely a good guy. Carol, is she as likeable? No, she's not, is she really? If you've seen it, like, she's not a very likeable person. She's a little bit, you know, she's portrayed again in the documentary as holier than thou, like I said, self-professed Mother Teresa of cats. And then we go and we see her park, And you kind of look at it and you go, what's the fucking difference? Like, what's the difference between your park and Joe's, really? And the documentary states that, really, you know, and Joe states that throughout the documentary, that, you know, this woman is professing herself as being the polar opposite of what Joe is, but really she's doing the very same thing, except she's not carting them around from schools to schools or from malls to malls doing petting, but she is profiting from them. Whereas Joe is paying a workforce, albeit a measly amount. I think they said they get 100 or 150 quid a week, and that's what they're living on. They get their bed and board, but now it shows the bed and board in the documentary, and yeah, it's fairly manky. Like, you know, there's no sanitation, there's no running water, and they're nearly fighting the tigers and lions for the meat. Like, you know, they're not well fed. But yeah, Carol is working with a team of volunteers, so she's not paying anyone. They all volunteer and they pay to do this program to work with the big cats in her refuge, which is Big Cat Rescue. But she still opens her gates to the public. She still, you know, there's ticket sales, and they talk about her earnings, and they seem to be in the millions as a result of this. And I guess there's no clear indication or clear evidence, not in the documentary anyway, of any of that money going to maybe conservation or, you know, the preservation of animals, of these wild cats in the wild. You know, they don't allude to that in the documentary, and there's definitely the insinuation that any money Carol makes, Carol gets, or it goes back into the park, which, look, is fair enough as well, but you need money to run a park and all that jazz. But, like, she's not paying a lot of overheads by comparison. Joe was paying a lot, and, you know, that comparison is made in the documentary as well. Kind of, you know, the juxtaposition, what is really the difference between these people? Is it that they're polar opposites of this scale, or are they very similar in fact? And that's the issue, you know, that both of them want to be the head honcho, the kingpin in this wild cat world. And so that really is left to the public. You know, the documentary just kind of gives out the information as it has it, and then it's left for you to figure that out. But yeah, so basically this is the premise for the documentary, that there has been a plot to kill Carol Baskin, that allegedly Joe was the mastermind behind it, and as a result he is in jail. And I suppose the documentary is then showing in a linear kind of, you know, fashion how we got from this point, how we got this carefree guy who just loves his animals, you know, maybe a little bit uneducated but seems like a good guy, to this supposedly guy putting out hits on people, really, you know. And that's where the documentary takes off from. So, I mean, there are aspects of this documentary that I absolutely loved. There's a lot about it I absolutely loved, but, like, there's a lot wanting in this documentary as well. So, for example, like, the bits to live for in this documentary are probably the interviews with Carol and her husband Howard. He is the third husband she's had, this documentary says. So she got married as a teenager and had a daughter, and then left him shortly thereafter, and then gets married to another guy who was already married when she met him. He's a millionaire. They open up this park together, and he disappears under mysterious circumstances. So he kind of says to people in his tight social, you know, inner circle, if anything happens to me, go to the police, it's Carol. And then he disappears. And then Carol gets everything changed into her name, and she inherits his fortune and the park. And then, like, his family are brought into it as well. So this is what I'm saying about, like, multiple documentaries going on within a documentary. So there's Joe, and there's just him. I mean, he's a documentary in and of himself. Then there's the whole feud with Carol and, you know, the plot murder for hire or whatever with her. Then there's Carol and her second husband who went missing. So she's married again to this guy Howard, and I mean, it shows their wedding, and Jesus fucking Christ, like, they're wearing, like, moo-moos, tiger print moo-moos, and they're wearing, like, I don't even know how to describe these. They're like the skull or the head of a tiger, but hollowed out and worn as a hat, like a tiger head hat, if that makes sense. Both of them are wearing them, and they're wearing like lows, and yeah, it's just all very fucking mad and cringe, and you know, they're all batshit crazy in this. Like, that's what I'm saying. You could make a documentary about any one of them and you'd have an absolute belter, but like, there's just so many lunatics in one documentary. Yeah, so they're now, Carol and her third husband, they're now running the park, and they've been afforded this wealth. And like I said, you know, Joe has this online TV show where he just, you know, I think initially it started out as promoting the park, but then it just turns into the Bash Carol parade, and that's all he does. And he has, you know, episodes up where he's shooting a sex doll with Carol's face on it, or he's like blowing it up with a grenade, or he's like fucking its mouth with a dildo, and, you know, openly saying, I'm gonna fucking kill her, I'm gonna knife the bitch, I'm gonna, you know, just all this really fucking incriminating stuff. And you think if the guy had, you know, a bit of an education or half a brain cell, he probably wouldn't have put himself in this vulnerable position where he'd uploaded all of this shit online, whether it's what he thinks or not. Like, we all say we love to kill someone sometimes, but, or maybe that's just me. But yeah, he leaves himself in a really vulnerable position by saying all this shite, and then obviously there is a hit put out on her and it's linked back to him, so it doesn't look good. Oh god, the music videos. We need to take a moment and talk about the music videos. So, not only is Joe the self-professed Tiger King, the runner of this park, the runner of this TV show, he's also a very talented musician. No, he's not. But it shows these music videos that he does. And you'd just be astounded by his beautiful singing voice. Which is clearly fucking not him, like, just not in a million years. He has this really nasally, high-pitched voice, and then this guy has this real soulful, deep, honky-tonk country music voice. Like, there's just, you know, you're fooling no one but yourself, Joe. I don't think there's anybody who watched that documentary who believed that was you singing those songs, but there's numerous ones, and it shows the music videos, and they're just so badly done. You couldn't believe they were true. They're like, you know, a piss take or a caricature of what a shit music video is. So just, you know, for example, there is one where he's standing on the bonnet of his pickup truck while it's, I don't know what they're called, you know, the lights that are on the roof, they're like a siren, are going off, and he's wearing, you know, that kind of country and western style garb. He's wearing a pair of leather pants and leather boots and like a fringe shirt and, you know, the Stetson, and he's singing along about a tiger. And the pickup truck's in the middle of like a grass field. It looks like he's in, you know, the Sahara somewhere, and there's a very badly green screened or CGI'd thunderstorm going on in the background, and then he's cuddling the tiger in the grass, singing to it, and yeah, it's just fucking awful. And he releases a song as well about Carol, called "Here Kitty Kitty," which is alluding to the fact that maybe Carol had killed, dissected and fed her second husband to the tigers in her big cat reserve, and maybe that's where the husband went to. So look, what do I like most about this? I like a lot about this documentary. I like that it's so shit, and it is shit, and I say that, like, you know, with no malice, but it's, if you're watching this documentary to be educated or to learn something, there is nothing really. Like, you know, you could say, oh, it's bringing light to the lax laws in America, but like, is anything really going to be done as a result of this documentary? I don't think so. You know, it's not a hard-hitting factual, you know, like Blackfish or whatever, which interestingly, I've done a little bit of research, as I always do about these documentaries. I did a little bit of research after watching the documentary. That's actually how this idea was sold to Carol Baskin. So she was led to believe that this is exactly what this was going to be. It was going to be a hard-hitting, factual, educational, you know, look behind the scenes into the underbelly of, you know, illegal trade of wild cats in America. And like Blackfish was to SeaWorld, really was what would stomp it out. And of course, it's not that at all. It's solely focused on this, spectacular spectacle of a life of Joe Exotic, and then his feud with Carol, and it focuses heavily on the disappearance and alludes to the murder of her second husband. They are probably the strongest factors in this documentary within a documentary within a documentary. There's many other facets. There's a lot I'm not mentioning. There's a lot of sub stories and sub plot lines as well. But yeah, it's not in any way, shape or form some kind of an educational tool. It's not. But I don't think anyway. It's not going to get any kind of legislation brought or anything like that. So no, are we learning anything from it? No, other than just this mad world that we're getting an insight into, and how, I suppose how corrupt America is. Jesus, aren't all Netflix documentaries just, isn't that the message under each one of them nowadays? Just like, it's this story, but it's just showing how corrupt America is, making a murder, this, they're all just, how lax the laws are, and how, if you've a lot of money, you can get away with these things, and if you don't, you won't. Simple as. Are there drawbacks in this documentary? There are, I suppose, a couple. I mean, it excludes some information, but then in their defense, it's 7 episodes, and at times it even drags. Like, there's probably a couple of episodes in the middle there that they could have done without. Maybe it's 1.5 or 2 episodes too long, but still manages to exclude information. So it excludes the information that Joe actually had 2 previous husbands before the 2 guys he's married to in this, and then he's married to another guy now. So the 2 previous husbands, the first guy died of HIV related complications, and the second was jailed for molestation, and is now doing life for murder or manslaughter. I can't remember exactly which one or the other. But as I said, I did lose interest kind of in the middle couple of episodes, and I was like, oh Jesus, just crack on already. What's going on? Is he going to murder Carol, or when are we going to see that kind of plot unfolding? It veers off into a subplot where Joe loses the park. It's sold to this guy that he befriends and believes is a millionaire, and then it turns out he doesn't have a lot of money, but Joe is already, after signing the park over to him, because he is effectively bankrupt from all these legal cases that Carol's bringing against him, and I know that they probably need that in there in some way, shape or form to get the story from A to B, but I just feel like it drags on a little bit too much, and it's just not that interesting. The other downside, I suppose, really is that, like, if you want to be really objective for a moment, and I mean, there's nothing serious about this fucking documentary, but if you want to get serious for a moment, I suppose, really, this documentary, over the course of the 7 episodes, it kind of documents the mental disintegration of Joe. From this really big, happy, larger than life person, how the shit really hits the fan, how it all goes downhill. Spoiler alert, out of the 2 husbands, one is sleeping with one of the employees in the park, and gets her pregnant and fecks off with her. And then the other guy, it shows it in the documentary, either accidentally or on purpose, shoots himself. Guy seems to be like permanently on drugs, so it's hard. It doesn't really say, and again, it's left up to you, I suppose, to decide for yourself. But he's always messing around with guns. He's always pointing guns at people and himself, and he's messing around one day with a gun and he points at his head, and it either goes off or he shoots himself, whatever you want to believe. But it shows, just Joe, the mental disintegration of him after that, and within 2 weeks of that second husband's death, he's married again. So is there a care of duty there by the documentary makers that maybe, I don't know, maybe was compromised for just a really great documentary, or really not great educational wise, but I mean in terms of just absolute madness, just, lunacy. Did they forego that? I don't know. I guess, if we're going to get down to the nitty gritty of it, they probably did. But look, as I said, it's probably the reason it didn't appeal to me from the get-go, from the time I saw the promo on Netflix, is because you're not really going to learn anything. Not anything that matters anyway. It'll probably kill a few brain cells, to be perfectly honest with you. But I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, a gazillion people online can't be wrong. You will absolutely, most definitely be entertained by this documentary. It's probably just not my type of documentary. In terms of, I like to be educated. I like to learn something I didn't know before. I kind of like them to be hard hitting. I like to be a little bit fucked off after a documentary, going, annoyed about whatever the laws in that country or the judicial system, or just the unfairness of it. And I suppose I'm a very fair person, so like that's kind of what gets me. I like fighting for the underdog, and I like a story telling about the underdog and their rise to proving themselves innocent or not, whichever. And I guess there's you don't really come away from this documentary caring about anyone. I didn't anyway. Maybe I am just a cold-hearted bitch. Maybe I am Carol Baskin. I don't know. But yeah, that's why I suppose it's not ever going to be on my top list of documentaries. I'm probably going to get slaughtered for this review because, like I said, the memes out there are like, this documentary is just comedy gold, and it is. So I'm not shitting on it in that regard. Definitely do watch it, but just be forewarned. It's like, do you know what? It's like the reality TV of a documentary. So go into it with that in mind and be prepared, I suppose. Oh my God, I'm running out of time and I haven't got to half the things I wanted to tell you guys. So look, very, 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 very quickly, just a few points that I found while I was doing my research on this. First one, this is awful, but Joe's husband, John, the guy with a tooth left in his head, he's after getting new teeth. So I did a little bit of research, found John, post documentary. He's after getting a new set of pearly whites, and I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say it. He is quite an attractive man. He looks all right with the teeth in him. Fair play to you, John. The fire. This was an interesting thing I discovered on my travels. The fire that happens in the documentary. Again, if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry. There's a lot in this documentary. It's hard to get everything in. Long story short, there is a fire that takes place in the purpose-built TV studio that Joe has for his TV show, his online TV show. And like I said at the head of the documentary, that's pretty much been ran by this producer, Rick Kirkham. That's the guy who coined the term Bumfuck Oklahoma. What it doesn't say in the documentary is that when there was kind of ongoing investigations, a journalist contacted the case officer in Wynwood Police Department and asked for comment or asked for details about the case. And after that, got a phone call from Joe Exotic, going, who the fuck do you think you are? Looking for information. It's none of your goddamn business, yada, yada, yada. And the journalist was like, wait a minute, how did you know I rang the police department? And he said, oh, the case officer for the fire in the TV studio is also my limo driver. So, yeah, the case officer in the police department for the fire in the TV studio of Joe Exotic was also Joe Exotic's limo driver. That sounds a little bit suspicious, I think. And further to that, Rick Kirkham, who, like I said, was the producer of this TV show for Joe, he, and it documents this in the documentary, that he leaves Wynwood shortly after the fire. He lost everything. All of his equipment was in the TV studio, but he returns home and shortly after, his house burns to the ground. So look, I don't know, but like there's two people directly involved with Joe who are also, you know, have funny backstories, or there's coincidences there which are just a little bit strange when it's pertaining to this case of arson in the TV studio. And another little thing, which, you know, again, doesn't really have anything to do with the massive plot, but is a subplot in this. Carol Baskin and the husband that goes missing. So he went missing and was legally declared dead in 2002. And in that same year, the guy that Carol was seeing at the time, so not her husband Howard, who she's married to now, but the guy that she was seeing between the husband that disappeared or died or whatever and her current husband, he filed a restraining order against her. And in that restraining order, there are details alluding to the disappearance of her husband. Now, I can't find out details about them, and I couldn't find out details about them, but that's interesting. Now, whether they were anything significant, I'm assuming they weren't, or they would have been pursued. But yeah, apparently he gave the police at that time, when he was doing the restraining order, some details pertaining to that. So that is very interesting as well. But look, the other thing about this thing is that there is a mini series in the pipeline for this one. I mean, I think this is just like more so than the OJ Simpson thing, anything. This was born to be a mini series and overacted, and just, you know, to be shown in all its flamboyant glory. So I'm really looking forward to that, actually. But yeah, that is Tiger King. It's a documentary. It's not going to educate you, but it's certainly going to entertain you. And guys, look, I'm going to leave it there, folks. So that has been episode 3 of What's Up, Doc. We're on season 2. As always, give us a like, give us a share, give us a follow, give us a review, for the love of God. Give us a good one. We are at What's Up, Doc Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. And as always, I have been your host, Gemma Delaney. We will see you next time. Good night. God bless.
If you love to be remembered as the person who gives the best birthday gifts, I'm here to tell you that 1-800-Flowers.com is your ultimate birthday gifting destination. 1-800-Flowers has thoughtful and artfully created options that are guaranteed to deliver the best birthday surprise. Shop thousands of unique gifts at 1-800-Flowers.com for exclusive offers and great values. To order today, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/tune in. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/tune in.